In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, September 19th. It's a race against time for President Yoon as he seeks to schedule as many separate summits with his global counterparts on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly to address bilateral interests and Busan's bid to host the 2030 World Expo. And a controversial prisoner swap between Washington and Tehran takes place following the transfer of $6 billion worth of Iranian funds frozen here in South Korea since 2019 to bank accounts in Qatar. Meanwhile, the Washington, D.C. Federal District Court dismisses a lawsuit filed last October by U.S. nuclear energy company Westinghouse against its competitor Korea Hydro in nuclear power to block the latter's sale of reactors to Poland. We start in New York, where President Yoon is engaged in a flurry of diplomatic interactions ahead of his speech scheduled for Wednesday U.S. time at the UN General Debate. Our presidential correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers day one of his agenda.
President Yoon is utilizing the UN General Assembly visit to New York to meet with as many leaders on the sidelines as possible to request support for Busan's bid to host the World Expo 2030. At 10 a.m. on Monday, he landed at John F. Kennedy Airport and went straight to meet his Sri Lankan counterpart for talks, which was followed by summits with San Marino, Burundi, the Czech Republic, Denmark, and Montenegro, among others. By just 7 p.m., he had met with 8 leaders. The meetings will have a repeated message requesting support at the BIE. But understanding the broader bilateral context is vital for Yoon during these meetings in order to use the opportunity to broaden South Korea's multilateral diplomacy. For instance, the meeting with San Marino marked the first talks between its leadership and a South Korean president. They discussed enhancing tourism cooperation. Similarly, in the meeting with the Czech Republic, they focused on energy and infrastructure, particularly hydrogen energy and trains, areas where the Czech Republic is seeking collaboration with South Korea. Yoon also discussed climate change with countries including Denmark, a long-standing ally since the establishment of the Green Growth Alliance in 2011. Additionally, several countries acknowledged South Korea's significant role in ensuring stability in the Asia-Pacific region through security cooperation. If all goes to plan for his stay until Friday, he's set to meet with around 40 leaders. That's not to say sideline summits are the only items on the president's schedule. He'll also meet with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and will attend a reception hosted by US President Joe Biden. Wednesday is a big day, as Yoon will be delivering his speech at the UN General Assembly. He also returns to NYU's Digital Vision Forum on Thursday, before wrapping things up here on Friday. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, New York.
Now, amid this latest presidential agenda in the global arena, a former South Korean ambassador to the UN says the Yoon administration's intentions to expand its role in addressing global concerns is a welcome initiative. My colleague Oh Soo-young covers his remarks.
South Korea has a crucial role to play in a world that faces continuous threats and challenges that leave the most vulnerable people in society even further behind. That's according to South Korea's former ambassador to the United Nations, Oh Jun, who also served as president of the UN Economic and Social Council. Ahead of President Yoon's address to the General Assembly, all raised the urgency of advancing key 2030 agendas, including the Sustainable Development Goals to end extreme poverty and the Paris Climate Agreement on reducing carbon emissions. He says time is running out.
The implementation of the SDGs has been negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know. For example, the global population below the poverty line, which had been going down since the Millennium Development Goals, started to grow again for the first time in 20 years.
Or underscored the humanitarian crisis in Myanmar as an example, having visited the Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh last month, which is the world's largest with about 1 million refugees, half of whom are children under 18.
The number of refugees and displaced people in the world keeps growing, with more diverse factors causing their hardship, such as wars, climate crises, and natural disasters.
Or endorses Ho's growing commitment to official development assistance, which will see a 44% increase in next year's budget. He said the beneficiary-turned-donor country can now increase the quality as well as the quantity of its contributions. This includes President Yoon's push to set global standards on digital access, rights, usage and development.
Standardization will also help to enable many developing countries in the world to gain access to the global market and to position themselves on an equal footing with the developed economies. This, I hope, will in turn contribute to bridging the digital divide globally, which is an important target of the United Nations and other international bodies.
Or chairs Save the Children Korea, which has provided tablet PCs and online education to increase access to quality learning, as well as aid for children in conflict-ridden Myanmar and Ukraine. Despite the growing number of common challenges, Or says global cooperation has also suffered setbacks due to reasons that include rising nationalism.
Countries like South Korea should be more active in promoting global cooperation, because as a middle power, we benefit more from a stable and rule-based world based on global governance provided by multilateral institutions. For example, when the war in Ukraine is over, I think there will be a serious debate on the big loopholes we have in the current peacekeeping mechanism. I hope South Korea can play a leading role in such a debate, not least because we will be a member of the Security Council for the next 2 years.
President Yoon on Wednesday will push for Ukraine's peace and reconstruction and outline his plan to address global gaps in development, climate and digital transformation in his vision to make Seoul a more responsible actor in the international community. 오수영, Arirang News, New York.
Also, on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken sat down with Chinese Vice President Han Zheng to touch upon North Korea's weapons, Russia's war and the Taiwan Strait. In his opening remarks, Blinken said the world expects the U.S. and China to manage their relationship responsibly, and Washington remains committed to doing so. Han, for his part, noted that the world needs a steady and sound relationship between the two countries and urged Washington to take more, quote, concrete action. In a statement after the meeting, the U.S. State Department claimed the two officials had, quote, a candid and constructive discussion and agreed to keep their communication lines open. In other news, a diplomatic deal reportedly months in the making has seen the transfer of frozen Iranian funds here in Korea to bank accounts in Qatar in a controversial prisoner swap between the U.S. and Iran. Our Choi Min-jung reports.
The United States and Iran have completed a rare prisoner swap deal after billions of U.S. dollars of Iranian funds frozen in South Korea were released back to Tehran. In a statement on Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden said 5 Americans who were imprisoned in Iran are finally coming home. These Americans had been detained in Iran for nearly a decade on a number of allegations, including espionage. Separately, Iran's state-run media reported that 5 Iranians held by the U.S. who had been charged with crimes are now free. 2 of the 5 have reportedly landed in Tehran. Citing sources, Reuters said the swap happened after both sides confirmed that around $6 billion of frozen Iranian assets were transferred from South Korea to Qatar, the mediator of the U.S.-Iran talks. Seoul's foreign ministry on Tuesday confirmed that the Iranian funds have been successfully transferred to Qatar. The money had been locked in South Korea due to sanctions imposed by the U.S. following its withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. The frozen funds have become one of the main reasons behind South Korea and Iran's thorny relations, as Tehran has long been demanding that Seoul release the funds. That being said, the ministry also expressed hope to see developments in relations with Iran following the transfer. Meanwhile, Biden thanked South Korea and other countries involved for helping the detained Americans come home. The U.S. president said that he was grateful to the partner countries for their tireless efforts to achieve the goals, and thanked the governments of South Korea, Qatar, Oman, and Switzerland. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also thanked South Korea for its close coordination and partnership. Although the prisoner swap and release of Iranian funds may appear to be an encouraging development in Washington and Tehran's rocky relationship, tensions are expected to remain high, with Tehran's nuclear program still a sticking point. Choi Min-dong, Arirang News.
Korea hydro and nuclear power is breathing a sigh of relief as a U.S. district court has dismissed a lawsuit against its exports of reactors. Our Ian explains.
On Monday, the U.S. Federal District Court of Washington, D.C. dismissed Westinghouse's case filed against Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power over issues of intellectual property infringement. Westinghouse had filed complaints in a U.S. court in October last year against KHNP and its parent Korea Electric Power Corporation to block South Korea's exports of nuclear power reactors to Poland. The move came shortly after KHNP had inked a letter of intent with energy companies in Poland to build a nuclear power plant, which includes multiple 1.4 gigawatt capacity power units. Westinghouse argued that the Korean APR 1400 nuclear reactor model was based on its original design and technology, which requires agreement before any exports. Meanwhile, KHNP argued that while assistance was received in the early stages of development of the APR 1400, the core technology was domestically developed, making it free from U.S. export restrictions or any royalty payments. However, the Washington, D.C. Federal District Court dismissed the case over lack of standing to sue based on the Department of Energy's Rules and Regulations Part 810. The court stated that the authority to enforce the export restriction had been delegated exclusively to the U.S. Attorney General, and therefore a private entity that is not the U.S. government does not hold the legal authority to assert the rights. The core issue of intellectual property infringement has not been addressed, though, meaning this may not be the end to the dispute. Ian, Arirang News.
Korea's auto exports have hit a new high unseen for the month of August amid steady global demand for eco-friendly cars. Our Park Go-nu reports.
The value of auto exports last month reached an all-time high for any month of August. According to a report by the Industry Ministry on Tuesday, South Korea's automobile exports in August came to a total of $5.3 billion, a 29% jump year-on-year. South Korea has been seeing increases in the double digits every month since July 2022. Thanks to healthy outbound shipments, South Korea produced more than 300,000 vehicles in August for the first time in a decade, despite the fact that auto companies usually shut down factories during the month for about a week. An industry ministry official explained that the vehicle production supply chain only began returning to normal after the negative effect of COVID-19. Strong exports were mainly due to high demand for eco-friendly cars, including electric and hybrid vehicles, which made up almost one-third of the total auto exports. Eco-friendly cars saw a 47.8% on-year increase in terms of export value by reaching the $1.8 billion mark. Sales of environmentally friendly vehicles to the U.S. since the implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act increased 153% on-year. Also, the number of electric vehicles exported rose by over 61% compared to a year before. Domestic sales of eco-friendly vehicles also soared 11.9% on-year, with hybrid cars seeing a 53% increase. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
Also in local news, Korea is looking at a record plunge in tax revenue this year, which is also the case for other countries such as the US and Japan, amid lower corporate earnings and a lackluster property market. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
South Korea's annual shortfall in national tax revenue is estimated to reach a record high this year. The Ministry of Finance and Economy announced on Monday that it has revised down its tax revenue projection for this year by $44.5 billion to around $257 billion from its original estimate. That's a nearly 15% shortfall in tax revenue and is the largest percentage miss ever. This comes as the nation's tax revenue dropped by nearly $33 billion compared to a year earlier to around $164 billion during the first 7 months this year. The ministry mainly attributed the expected shortfall to a sharp decline in corporate earnings from the sluggish chip market, a slump in the real estate market, and the downturn in the global economy. A finance ministry official said that South Korea is not the only nation that is revising downward its tax revenue estimate for this year.
This year, major countries such as the US and Japan have also seen their tax revenues drop by a larger amount than was originally expected due to the slowdown in the global economy from high prices and interest rates.
The government plans to bridge the gap mainly through surplus funds such as the Foreign Exchange Equalization Fund and excess earnings from the previous year instead of drawing up a supplementary budget. The government says that the Foreign Exchange Equalization Fund has accumulated a large amount of Korean won from efforts to stabilize the volatile $1 exchange rate last year. The government will also expand participation from domestic experts and consult experts from international organizations such as the IMF and the OECD to enhance the accuracy of tax estimates. 이수진, Arirang News.
And global oil prices are chugging higher amid persistent concerns over steady supplies. In New York, West Texas Intermediate futures hit $91 and 48 cents a barrel on Monday, the highest for this year. Over in London, Brent crude oil futures also hit a fresh high for the year, closing at $94 and 43 cents per barrel. The latest surge in global oil prices comes amid expectations of greater demand from China, the world's second largest economy, following its latest favorable economic findings. Data shows China's industrial output and retail sales expanded beyond expectations in August, hinting at potential economic stability. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. And here in Korea, in line with the wisdom of these words, efforts are underway to promote apple varieties that require less labor. Our Chung Won-ju reports.
Apple growers are working to perfect apple coloration. They regularly tend to leaves and branches, rotate the fruits, and lay reflective film on the ground to ensure even sunlight exposure. For apples to turn red, the anthocyanin pigments in the fruit skin need to be activated by sunlight exposure. Recent prolonged high temperatures during the summer, however, have led to delayed coloration and less vivid colors, resulting in an increase of 3.3 hours in the time required for coloration management compared to a decade ago. In response, the Rural Development Administration has introduced apple varieties that require less coloration effort, the Green Summer King and Yellow Golden Ball apples. The Summer King variety is available in mid-July and features a slightly green shade with a hint of red when it's ready to harvest. The Golden Ball variety ripens in mid-August and has a yellow hue and excellent flavor.
Unlike other apples that require turning and using reflected films for coloration, this yellow apple just needs a bit of leaf removal.
The Summer King variety is harvested around the same time as the Japanese variety Sugaru, but is juicier and has a refreshing crunch. The Golden Ball variety, known for its rich and intense flavor, overcomes storage issues common in summer apples as its flesh is firm.
In the past, we had to wait until fall for good apples. I'm really looking forward to enjoying delicious apples this summer.
The RDA expects these two varieties to become representative early ripening apples.
Coloration defects arise due to global warming. To address this problem, we plan to focus on distributing yellow varieties, like Golden Ball, and green varieties that don't require coloration management in areas with high temperatures.
The RDA plans to further develop new apple varieties that can maintain high quality even during the hot summer and ensure consistent yields. Chung Won-ju, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. At the United Nations General Assembly in New York, the global organization has adopted a political declaration that accelerates action to realize its sustainable development goals. Announced at a high-level forum on Monday, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for the ending of hunger, switching to renewable energy, and spreading digitization and education. The SDGs include 17 goals meant to protect the planet and ensure peace and prosperity for all people. But despite the SDGs being adopted in 2015, progress has fallen short of expectations.
Yet today, only 15% of the targets are on track, and many are going in reverse. Instead of leaving no one behind, we risk leaving the SDGs behind. So, Excellencies, the SDGs need a global rescue plan.
It's hoped that Monday's declaration will speed up progress in each of the goals. In Peru, at least 24 people, including children, have been killed in a bus crash. Over 8 dozen others were injured. The bus was traveling from Ayacucho to Huancayo on Monday morning when it veered off a highway in the Huacoto region and plunged down a 200-meter deep ravine. Authorities say the bus had recently passed a safety inspection and an investigation into the cause of the crash is underway. According to a mayor of a nearby town, the road where the bus crashed was damaged in a landslide last month and has not been repaired. In the United States, the search for a missing F-35 jet has come to an end, following the discovery of wreckage. The $80 million aircraft was found in a field north of Charleston, South Carolina on Monday local time. The find comes a day after its pilot ejected because of a mishap during a training session. The plane was left in autopilot mode, and the military lost track of it. Search efforts for the F-35B Lightning II also included a request by the military for civilians to call with any information about the missing plane. Meanwhile, a 2-day stand-down for all aviation units has been declared to facilitate a discussion about safety measures and procedures. It will take place this week and apply to all units both inside and outside the US. And finally, in the United Kingdom, a new record has been set for the world's highest cheese pull. A 4-foot-wide nacho was dipped into a bowl of melted mozzarella cheese before being stretched 49 feet by a helicopter. The stunt took place over the weekend at Cheddar Gorge in Somerset and was verified by the World Talent Organization. The cheese pull was organized by Doritos Dippers to mark National Guacamole Day. It took more than a month of planning. The stunt comes as cheese pull clips have become a viral trend on short video sharing platforms, with some videos getting over 1 million views. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We are already heading into the end of September with the Chuseok holiday starting next week, but we still need to turn the AC on in the afternoon. Well, Daegu soared to nearly 33 degrees Celsius yesterday, and it will be slightly lower today, but hovering way above seasonal norms across much of Korea again. In fact, many parts of the world are dealing with a September heat wave this year with record-breaking temperatures. Well, back in Korea, upper regions could see light rain passing by, but it won't be enough to need an umbrella, whereas down south is under dazzling sunshine with very high UV rays today. Afternoon highs are 2 to 3 degrees higher than seasonal norms, and Gwangju and Busan will be topping out at 29 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Nationwide rain is in the forecast for tomorrow. Rain will start from central regions tomorrow at dawn before gradually spreading to the rest of the country. Southern provinces and east of Gangwon-do will see rain into Thursday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, those are the top stories at this hour here in Korea. Up next, we have our panel session on this year's UN General Assembly and more. Do stay with us.